Welcome to the Building and Growing podcast, James. We're delighted to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
You're most welcome. So look, James, do you want to introduce yourself, talk a bit about your current position at Fuel and previous experience?
Yeah, sure. So I look after what we call strategic partnerships, which most people think is like B2B sales, but actually we call strategic partnerships like IFA, like financial advisors, wealth managers, that kind of thing. So Fuel's an early stage VC. Obviously, I know you had Tom on recently, so you've heard all that stuff already, but my role in particular is like investor relations, sales,
Fantastic.
whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
My background, so I started off as a cashier at a bank, kind of worked for a guy who realized that customer relations was like the most important thing when it comes to selling. So learned a lot from that, went into like pensions, investments, all the usual stuff.
Nice.
And then joined the kind of venture world like 2016-ish.
Yes.
Joined with a platform. So we were a platform that had loads of different venture funds like EIS, SCIS, VCT funds on the platform, and then we sold like 50 of them.
Yes.
And then spent a few years there, and then joined my first sort of direct fund early 2020. Worked for a guy that built his first company up and sold for like $750 million on the
Wow.
Nasdaq. So
Yeah.
incredible guy to learn from, a guy called John Bailey. Spent a few years there learning from him, and then joined Fuel Ventures last year. Fuel, for me, the reason I joined Fuel was one, because of the founder, Mark. So
Yes.
Mark's background was similar to me. Like, he left school at 16, went off, worked. He started off as a chef, started opening a few restaurants, then realised restaurants are very hard to scale. You can't be in 3 or 4 places at once.
Yeah.
So he then founded what was now My Voucher Codes back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Scaled that, sold it for a nice chunk of change. But what Mark's done at Fuel is build an unbelievable team around him. Like, the team's all very young, all dynamic, all the usual stuff. But yeah, the caliber of people there really kind of impressed me. So yeah, jumped into them last summer. Haven't looked back since. Been loving it.
Fantastic. Well, look, congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Glad it's been a smooth landing because, you've certainly done a lot. You've had exposure to a lot of different industries, and it's been an incredible growth story.
Yeah. It's been good. It's, we've seen a lot change in the last 2 years, but we've also seen a lot change in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
A lot's changed in the last 10 years. Like, I'm 33 now, so I've been doing it for enough time to say I've worked for over a decade. But yeah, venture's very different today than it was even a couple of years ago. So yeah, loving it.
Indeed. And, you touched upon the fact that your role is really investor relations. Is that something that, you thought you'd end up in? How did it happen?
Yeah, I'm not very analytically driven. I'm not a maths whiz or anything like that. So the kind of analyst, that kind of side never really appealed to me. But like I said, I love talking to people, whether that's investors, clients, founders, whatever.
Yes.
I love hearing that side of things. So the whole, naturally, if you like talking to people, then I guess sales is the kind of the role you go down.
Yes.
So yeah, it's something I enjoy. When we talk to founders, we get to hear from them why they're starting their company, why they're doing what they're doing. You see the passion. You get to see the light in their eyes. That's the part I love. So the sales role for me is kind of, investor relations works differently at different companies, depending on the size of the company. You could be a public company and then it's a whole other world. But with the stuff that I do, the basic day-to-day is, fielding incoming investor inquiries, investor outreach, so going out and finding new investors. Unfortunately, investors don't just land on your laps. You have to go out, find them, build a sales funnel, all the rest. So yeah,
Yes.
loving it.
Yeah, fantastic. And so look, you touched upon the fact that, you're 33, you've been in sales for a little while now.
Yeah.
How did you build up, let's say, your book and build up that funnel across, many, many years and build strong relationships?
So I think so when I started off for a pension fund back in 2010-ish,
Yes.
and that was originally back in the day, like, you got given like a geographical patch. So I looked after, for example, Kent and South East London.
Yes.
You have like 300 financial advisor firms in your patch.
Yeah.
My job was to go and see them, probably once a week for each of them, go and chat to them, see what they're doing, build the relationship that way.
Yes.
And that just kind of evolved. So every company I worked at, I'd end up then dealing with a bit of a bigger patch and a bigger patch. And eventually now I think I've dealt with probably a couple of thousand financial advisors over the years.
Far out.
All different size of companies, right from the one person company that's, working out of their home right up to the kind of, tier one bank level. But yeah, you kind of build up that network, and salespeople move around. There used to be, I think probably the generation before us, there was a big stigma if you've moved around a lot in your career, like, you work one place for 20 years and you retire, or a bit more than that. But now I think salespeople have to believe in what you sell, number one. If you're selling something that you don't like, it's hard to sell it to clients that you've known for that long. And I think there's cliche about people buy from people, but actually you do. Your relationships are as strong as what you used to sell. So if you've sold someone a dud, they're not going to take your call at your next company.
Indeed.
So yeah, you just kind of build up that book. And I work with a couple of other people that, again, have worked in that kind of financial advisor field. So you build up your investors. The people that, want to invest in the sort of funds you're working for. But yeah, just carried on. Every single company, you kind of acquire some new clients. And then when you move on, you sort of speak to them in 6 to 12 months' time, whenever your non-compete finishes. And go from there.
That's it. And look, I think that's a really good point that you made about the fact that, people won't buy from you again if you've sold a dud. And it sort of puts the pressure on salespeople in terms of picking, the right job, the right company. You spoke about the fact, both with Market Fuel now and previous founders of the other companies, that you were really impressed by their track records and the teams that they're building. And I think it's something that people don't really think about when it comes to choosing jobs,
I think more so now than it used to be, like maybe 5 years ago. But I think, there's all this stuff about how, more candidates out there, they're choosing the jobs they want now rather than just, it's an extra, 10% on the salary. But I think for most people, if you're in a sales role, if you don't like what you're selling, it's very difficult to sell it with confidence. So
yes.
Yeah, like, when I look at new companies, you background check them, you do all that sort of stuff. But then you listen to the founders, you listen to the existing salespeople, how do they sell it? Are they actually sort of compassionate about it? And yeah, it's very important, because nowadays, if you join somewhere and then it turns out to be like completely different than you thought, you can't leave a company after a month because you don't like it. So you have to do that kind of due diligence research before you join, and kind of really, get your background checks, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. And so, at the beginning, you talked about the fact that you're selling to IFAs and say wealth advisors and other stakeholders in the industry. Are you able to talk about sort of fundraising for SEIS and EIS funds?
Yeah, so it works, depending on the fund, it works differently from different places. So there's kind of two ways. SEIS and EIS, they're great schemes in the UK.
Yes.
A lot of companies probably wouldn't get funded without them. A lot of investors probably wouldn't invest in this kind of stuff without the sort of schemes in place. Because depending on how you look at it, it's either it's a way to mitigate the risk of an early stage investment by using the tax relief. But the way that fundraising works is very different depending on the type of fund. So some funds will have, for example, they're going to have, 10 companies they want to invest into. They'll agree term sheets and everything else with those 10 companies, and then they'll go out and fundraise afterwards.
Okay.
They won't necessarily have a pot of capital sat there ready to invest as soon as they see them.
Yes.
So Fuel differs slightly, where we raise the money and then we deploy it afterwards. So
okay.
Mainly, the main impact from a founder is, if you're a founder raising, say, £1 million round, if you go to a VC and they say, we're going to invest £1 million, you think, great, you've got all your expansion plans, you know what you want to do with the money. But then if the VC turns around and says, we're going to, drip feed that £100,000 for the next 10 months, you think, hang on, like, you can't do half the things you wanted to do.
Yeah.
All you do with that is you strangle the growth of the company. Founders aren't children. Some of them might be young, but they're not kids. If they've got a business plan, they've got the thing there. If a VC is looking to invest, the best thing they can do, the first thing they should do, is give them the capital they're looking for. So the other way for fundraising with a fund is, you raise the money first and then you go out and find the companies.
Yes.
The difficulty with that for newer funds and like emerging managers is, if you haven't got an established track record, it's hard to, if I say to you, hey, Lucas, invest in this company that we've invest in my new fund. I've got no track record. I don't know where I'm going to invest. You don't hang on. No, I'll wait and see.
Yeah, indeed.
For companies like us now, we've got to a stage where we can say to people, here's the last 10 companies we backed. We're going to look for another 10 companies that look like this.
Yes.
Come on board. And that means that when we then look at investing in a company, we can write them a ticket. So for our early seed fund, we do between kind of £1 to £3 million tickets.
Yes.
For our follow-on fund, we do kind of between 3 and 5 million, and we'll do that up front in one go.
Wow.
We want the founders to be able to they don't have to worry about making payroll next month. They should just focus on running the business. So they're the two kind of ways. Most funds will raise from a kind of mixture of like angel investors, high net worth individuals, and then financial advisors. So financial advisors play a massively important part because they obviously look after 100, 1,000 clients of their own. Yeah. So financial advisors have the part of looking at the funds. Do the funds meet the right criteria? Have they got a good track record? What's their what's their investment thesis? Do they have experience delivering what they want to invest into? So for us, when we talk to financial advisors, it's really important that one, we're not selling a dud, but two, you've got all that information there, because people now, they want so much more information, which to be honest they should have wanted 5 years ago. But I think the pandemic and stuff has really opened people's eyes as to looking under the bonnet, not just taking things on face value. They want to see the evidence. They want to see the diligence. So, it's been an interesting time to raise, but it's been good.
Yeah, fantastic. And, I think over the past couple of years, we have seen, some pretty big valuations and, there were some companies that really benefited from it. Yeah. But really interesting points about, the type of, the fact that IFAs want to do due diligence. Are you able to talk a little bit about sort of what they look for when they're doing their due diligence? Yeah,
sure. So, their due diligence at two levels. They do it on the fund, or the fund manager, or the fund provider, whatever you want to call it. So for us, advisor that comes in today will do diligence on Fuel Ventures. What's our track record? What's our management team look like? What's the investor team look like? Do we have experience investing in tech, or have we kind of completely pivoted overnight? Yeah. The second level then is I'll look at the investee companies. So, if we're lining up, so we've got a tranche coming up in a couple of months. If we're lining up, say, 5 to 10 companies for that tranche, they'll want to look at those companies. Do those companies have good growth? Have they got decent cash runway, or are we just investing so they can keep their lights on? Yeah. That kind of stuff it was done occasionally before COVID, but I think now, because people saw the kind of, how many businesses were hard hit, and there was a lot. Yes. So it's now a matter of, if this business has been going for, say, 4 or 5 years, and they were resilient enough to come through 2020 and 2021, then, they're obviously made of strong stuff. So the diligence on that level, and it's the same for the VC. Like, the VC has a lot more responsibility now to kind of go through research, due diligence on the companies, on the founders. It's not as simple as just Googling the founder and making sure, but there's a lot more to it. It's kind of looking through their financial forecasts, looking through their management accounts, looking through if they say they've got £1 million recurring revenue, can we speak to a client and actually verify that? Getting reviews from clients, especially if it's a B2B business, that's a lot easier, obviously. Indeed. But there's a lot more. And I think most investors now, if they're looking at a fund, there's various things they should definitely be looking at. But the main thing is, like, does that fund have a track record in what they're doing today? Like, if I've invested in, I don't know, renewable energy for the last 10 years and now I'm a tech investor, it's like, well, that doesn't always directly translate. So I think most investors now, once they've built that, built that reputation, once the fund has built that reputation, investors kind of get to learn. Fuel's very famous for like posting memes on LinkedIn and stuff like that. The main reason we do it is to get deal flow from founders. So founders come to us. We've got one of the highest followed LinkedIn pages in the VC sector purely from memes. Indeed. And everyone I speak to who I've, first time meeting them, it's, I follow you guys, you post memes. It's like, yeah, cool. But it does help us. We get hundreds of companies approach us a month for funding. Indeed. Not just for the memes, hopefully, but for our reputation as well.
I mean, I think it's really about creating content that resonates, because when you look at the memes, they are about situations that founders find themselves in. And so, it's content that resonates and gets consumed, and, has translated to a fantastic outcome, which is more founders coming, more deals, more quality deals.
Yeah, no, there's a lot. And, you know, I think we did a post last week about, you know, translating what a VC says to what it actually means. And, like, you know, so many VCs say, oh, we're founder friendly. And it's like, okay, how? Oh, you know, we invest in founders. It's like, it doesn't make you friendly. Like, no VC is going to say we hate founders or we're not founder friendly. So, yeah, I think that's a way of kind of making light of, or making a joke of certain things that in the industry, they used to happen a lot more.
Yeah.
I think now where there's kind of more emerging managers coming through, especially managers that are kind of run by ex-entrepreneurs, ex-operators, because like Mark, in his first company, he never raised VC money. He owned 100% of it when it sold. But one of the reasons he didn't raise VC money was because of some of the clauses, liquidation preferences, all of that. So I think nowadays, you know, when founders look at VCs, any VC can write a check. As long as they got the funds they've raised, they can write the founder a check. But, you know, what are they going to do after that money goes in? Are they going to, you know, provide introductions, and not just like, you know, I'm going to introduce you to my mate that might look at you in 5 years' time. Like, can they provide relevant, you know, meaningful introductions to that founder? You know, it's not just, a lot of VCs sit on the board, turn up for the board meeting once a month and don't talk to the founder until the next one. But it's much more about, you know, working with the companies. We were quite unique pre-COVID. We used to have all of our investee companies in our office.
Wow.
So that was amazing from the investor relations point of view, because, you know, you were talking to all the founders, all the companies, all the employees all day.
Yes.
We're opening a new building hopefully this summer, and again, we're hoping to get people back in. But you know, most founders love telling you what they're doing and love telling you about the business. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense for VCs to be a lot more kind of on it with founders, because otherwise, from an investor relations point of view, you know, if you ask me about, oh, how's this company doing, and I haven't spoken to them for 6 months, I can only really tell you what I've read on a report. It doesn't bring anything to life.
Yeah, and when you are out meeting potential investors, you know, are they asking you a bit about what the companies are doing? You know, you mentioned to me before that you have a lot to do with the sort of the portfolio companies, and how does that sort of work when you're talking with the investors?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, it's kind of like, you know, being able to tell an investor what the company does is kind of, that's your day job. You should be able to tell. Even, you know, we've got 100 and something companies in our portfolio now. I'll admit it's hard to keep track of all of them, but, you know, you read enough, you keep learning and all the rest, and you listen to the founders. But telling an investor, you know, this is this company, this is what they do, that's great. But then being able to tell them, you know, they've just, you know, signed up this new client, or they've just got this new bit of whatever it might be, they've just launched a new product or service.
Yes.
That's something that investors can relate to, because, I mean, venture capital, early stage investing in general, is so much more interesting. I mean, I haven't met anyone that disagrees with this yet, but, you know, I've never told my mates down a pub about how interesting a pension fund is or anything like that. But talking about a startup that's changing, you know, you're at Revolut and stuff like that, like talking about companies that are actually doing something that people use, like, that's a lot more interesting. So I think with investors, you know, investors might have a certain sector, you know, they might have spent their career in, you know, a SaaS business or whatever. They might have a certain sector they really like. So being able to tell them about a company that's doing something that's, you know, in their field of expertise, is so much more powerful, and it makes them kind of, you know, it aligns them with a company. They get excited when they hear updates about it, and it also just means that when that company does come to exit, you know, every investor is rooting for them, not because they're going to get a multiple on their return, but because, you know, they want the company to do well.
Indeed.
We had a company called Content Cow last year that got sold to Adobe.
Yeah.
At the time, it was one of Adobe's largest acquisitions outside of the States. So obviously, yes, from a financial point of view, investors got a great multiple. Everyone was happy. But even beforehand, in the kind of run up to it, you know, all the investors were asking about it, you know, how they're getting on, do they need any support?
Yeah.
We've built a very large investor network now where we've got investors within our network that have certain, you know, introductions they can make or skill sets, and they're always asking, you know, is there anything we can do to help the companies? And we love that part of it.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and that's sort of the network effect in a way, and it benefits everybody.
It does. It helps from, you know, one of the best things you can do as a sales or investor relations person is when you talk to your investors, you know, ask for, it sounds stupid saying ask for referrals, but, like, you know, ask within their network, is there other people they know or talk to all the time? Because most investors will talk to other people who do similar things, and, it's the best way. And if an investor really, bonds with one of your companies, and it happens to be that one of their mates works for someone that could, either do a follow-on round or acquire the company, like it's the best value you can add. And the only way you can do that is by building up a volume of, investors in the network.
Yes, indeed. Just stepping back for a moment, we spoke a bit about how fundraising had changed in terms of there being a much bigger focus on due diligence, certainly post-pandemic. Have there been any other notable sort of changes over the past couple of years?
I guess, obviously, the method of communicating, obviously a lot of people have gone from doing face-to-face appointments to, Zooms, Googles, Teams, whatever.
Yeah.
And also just over the phone, like a lot more. I used to drive all around the country, I'd go up to Manchester for 3 meetings and it would take out a whole day and all the rest. Whereas now I can have 3 meetings in Manchester on Zoom or whatever, and it takes up a few hours.
Yes.
So I think that's kind of primarily, it's made salespeople's lives a bit easier, but also the client's life. Like the client used to, if I deal with a financial advisor, they'd be taking an hour or 2 out of their day, an hour to meet, an hour to travel, whatever it might be. Whereas now, we can run through things in a 30-minute video call.
Indeed.
So that's been one thing. The other thing has been kind of the way you communicate, and that could be with existing or the way you get new investors, because, so many funds still rely on, I'll just send out emails. I'll use HubSpot, Salesforce, whatever CRM.
Yes.
Send out a mass email to my database and tell them that we've got a fund open, which is great. But most people now get 40, 50 emails a day that they don't read. Right. So emails only get you so far, but stuff like, social media, putting out content with podcasts, putting out all that kind of stuff. There are so many funds now that are more and more switched on.
Yeah.
Where, different media communication methods, different, whether it's we're writing a weekly blog, LinkedIn post, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot more now where, you can use that to capture an audience. And I mean, from the UK's point of view, early stage funds have, certain regulation they have to adhere to. So, these are high risk investments. People have to understand that. But, once you've captured the right information on a potential investor, talking to them about a company that really resonates or whatever, it's a lot more fluid now, because you can do that within an initial Zoom call.
Yes.
It's also a lot more kind of, investors can find out a lot more before that initial call. So, if I'm talking to a potential investor, I can say, well, if you want, we recorded a webinar last week. We did it live for our investors, but, the recording's here. Watch that.
Yes.
Take 10 minutes to learn a bit about us. If you still want to have a chat, then we can do that. So, there's a lot more kind of, that's definitely changed things. And I think for the better, because you can be a lot more efficient with your time now. You can spend time on the things that really matter, and cut out some of the stuff that probably doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, indeed. No, I think that just the way you quantified that in terms of each stakeholder, spent an hour traveling to get to the meeting, had the meeting, and then left.
Yeah.
Over the course of those 3 hours nowadays, you can fit 5 or 6 sort of Zoom meetings in. So
it's also like, it's a lot more. I used to do a meeting, if I had a meeting at 10 o'clock, all right, then I'd drive to my next meeting, then I'd have that, then I'd drive to the next one and have that. And then I'd get home, send out 3 emails from that day and all the rest. Whereas now I can have a meeting, I can say, I'm going to send you this, this and this. It was sent 60 seconds after the meeting takes place. It's still fresh in the advisor's mind. And, that's a lot more effective use. And also you think if you're an advisor or you're an investor and you're talking to 5, 6 different funds, it's very easy to forget what the first one said. So,
indeed.
Just kind of getting that sort of place where, you've given them exactly what they've asked for. If you say, I'm going to send you this, make sure you send that thing first.
Indeed.
And then, it's fresh in their mind sort of thing.
Yeah, that's it. And look, I mean, I think there's a very good let's say tips for people in general in terms of the importance of following up. I wanted to see, James, whether you've got any tips for people who are considering a career in sales or maybe in investor relations.
I guess first one is kind of, I suppose from a communication skills kind of thing, build up. You don't need to have gone to university. You don't need to. I mean, some places, sure, they want a, MBA degree and all the rest of it. But for most people now, if you can communicate well, that's like the first thing we'd look at. If I was hiring a salesperson now, I want to see how they come across, how they present, how they talk, all the rest of it.
Yes.
So I think, building up your communication skills, you can watch YouTube videos, you can listen to podcasts, you can watch podcasts, whatever it is, you can build that up for free. That's
Indeed.
practicing. And then I guess building up a network. So even if you're younger, talking to people, always being curious, always trying to find out, oh, what do you do? What did you do before this? What are you doing? Like, what are you working? All that kind of thing is just, it will help you building a network. Everyone thinks, you have to have, this black book of contacts that you can call on and, your friend works at this place and he can get you a job. But actually, if you build a network just naturally, I'm not a big lover of networking events for the sake of just networking. But if you've got like industry specific events where you can chat to other people, kind of learn about what they do, it's the best way of doing it.
Indeed.
I've had a few coffees with people recently where they said, I'm doing this, I want to get into this side, can we have a chat? And it's an easy thing to say, sales is great, but salespeople usually go into sales for the money and then they stay in sales because of the money. But actually, there's a lot of other benefits. So I think it's building up their communication skills, always kind of, as I said, being curious, always trying to learn more. If you hear, so I probably, annoy the hell out of bosses and stuff in the past where I just constantly ask, oh, why do we do that? Why do we do that?
Yeah.
But, constantly being curious about stuff, why things happen the way they do,
Yes.
Why this founder's doing that or whatever it is, so you can understand. And then it helps, the use of also embracing technology. Like there's so much tech out there now where, I started off using, a few years ago using Calendly, which at the time I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Now I couldn't be without it, because rather than saying to you, oh, hey, like, are you free at 1? No, well, I'm free at 3, all the rest. Just send someone a link, say, pick a time at work, great. You've then got tools like ChatGPT. Everyone's talking about GPT at the moment, but like, ChatGPT has helped from a sales point of view. From, if I say write an email that tells someone about this, it knocks it out. And it's important that you still stay sharp enough with your own skill set. But embracing technology is saving people so much time.
It's all those incrementals that add up.
It's massive. Like, take fuel. We used to, people used to send us a deck over email. We'd get however many decks a day, look through a deck that takes 25 minutes sometimes.
Yes.
Whereas now, we have a founder application on the website. Founders come through the website. They tell us about their business that goes on. It's all automated.
Yeah.
The deals team then pick it up. It gets filtered out to relevant people. It saves so much time. So just anyone going to sales, make sure your communication skills are on point. If they're not, work on them. Use some free resources. Get some courses done. Whatever.
Yes.
And then embracing technology and just always questioning everything. I guess.
Yeah.
It might come across annoying, but you learn so much just by asking people why they're doing whatever it is they're doing.
Indeed, yeah. Look, I really, I agree with all 3 points, but particularly, the last one in terms of curiosity and just sort of digging below the surface level little by little, because that's where you find the sort of, either the gold nuggets of like, actually, I understand how this influences this. But more importantly, you understand the sort of incrementals and you can help add them up to have a massive impact in the long run. So.
Yeah, if you understand the basis of why someone wants to do something or why someone wants to know more information about your product or your service, it makes it a lot easier from a sales point of view to sell it. Because, if I know that you like, I don't know, a certain aspect of something, I'm going to lean on that aspect, I'm going to leverage that. Yeah. And, it's very easy that if I then see that, we've got someone, a mutual contact, I'll leverage that for the introduction. I can then talk to you about, oh, hey, I see Tom. Yeah. All that sort of stuff. That it sounds simple to say, but it's so many people don't do it.
Indeed.
And I think also from a sales side, like once you're in those kind of entry level roles, and just even more senior side of the thing, not enough people are specific about what they want. Like if you're speaking to someone, tell them what you want. And like I get so many emails, and it just gets lost to me where, someone will say, oh, hey, I want to talk about partnerships, and it's like, what? Like, what? I don't know what you do. I don't know what, like, all the rest of it. So I think if you're talking to someone, if you're looking for a job, if you're looking to sell them something, tell them what it is you want. Tell them what you're going to solve for them. Don't tell them, hey, I've got this fund. It's we invest in the early stage. Ask if they do, do you invest in the early stage? All right, cool. Then tell them what you do. But so many salespeople get lost in like dumping all their kind of, this is everything I've got. And then, people switch off. People have very short attention spans. So,
they do.
Yeah, I normally read like the first 3 lines of a cold LinkedIn message, and if I can't work out what they do and what they want, it's kind of, I don't reply.
Indeed. Yeah, I think understanding what people are motivated by, what their KPIs are, it's very, very important in order to engage with them. And I think even now, one sort of gap that I've seen in the market is that there's still room for companies to be more KPI led and driven with their employees, so that they're like, actually, this person's role is to absolutely, smash this, like lead to order conversion, for example, or, to do this. And it kind of gives everybody a bit more purpose.
It does, and it also makes everyone's work day go a bit quicker, because there are kind of work for companies in the past where, you wear all these different hats, and all right, at a startup, that's expected. You have to be able to wear different hats, and you have to be able to pitch in. But also, if you, like you said, if you know what you're supposed to be doing, you can just get on and do it. And if I know that tomorrow I've got to make some calls to these 10 existing investors, and then I'm going to talk to these 5 new ones, it's very easy to then structure my day so I can do that.
Indeed.
And KPIs from a sales management point of view, KPIs are great because they help companies be able to see, are we going to meet target? Are we, going to hit what we need to raise, all the rest of it? But also just from, if a company has quite a large sales team, it's very easy to get bogged down in, I've got my pipelines on a spreadsheet, and I've got mine on a notebook, and I've got it's just easier to have a centralized KPI. And a lot of people don't want to be micromanaged, and I agree, I hate being micromanaged, but it's kind of, KPIs are a way of just knowing what your business is doing without micromanaging. So
that's right.
Makes life a lot easier for everyone.
Oh yeah, it is. And it helps if, say, you've got a massive sales team, and you're looking at the funnel and there's a whole lot of stuff which is mid-funnel. Well, then it's like, all right, like once that, either converts or gets lost, there's nothing else coming in. So you can then reposition and say, look, guys, just have a little bit more of a look at the top, or, actually if stuff's coming through in the top and it's not going into the middle funnel, what's going wrong? Let's solve the problem.
Yeah, not enough people. I mean, CRMs obviously help massively. Like, I've used Salesforce, I've used HubSpot, I've used Dynamics. But you're right, not enough people focus on every single stage of the funnel. We kind of break ours down into, we've had an initial conversation, they've got some follow-up questions, right through to we've sent them the application, the money's in the door.
Yes.
But it's kind of, like you say, if you don't keep constantly filling up the top of the funnel and things don't convert, then nothing comes out the other end.
Yeah, indeed.
And it's the same for deal flow. We constantly have to keep looking at ways to get more founders, more companies in the top of our funnel. So, we get on average about 300 companies a month apply through our website.
Yeah.
At pre-seed, we invest in kind of 30 to 40 a year.
Yeah.
At seed, we invest in maybe 10 to 15 new companies a year. So to go from 3 and a bit thousand companies down to kind of 10 to 15 at seed, there's a lot of stuff to go through. But it's it makes life a lot easier if you like you said, you build those funnels out. And it also helps. I'm a big believer, there's a lot of funds that have kind of quotas on diversity mandates for founders and stuff like that, which is very important because historically diversity in VC has been very bad. But
yes,
my biggest belief is if you build diversity at the top of the funnel, then you don't impose those kind of restrictive quotas further down the line because you've built a funnel at the first. So if you're saying, okay, we're going to invest in 10%, there's so many VCs now, we want female founding businesses. That's great. There's amazing female founded businesses, but don't worry about getting them at the end of the funnel. Get them into the top of your funnel. Make yourself approachable where a company can come to you if they don't have a warm introduction from someone you went to university with or whatever. Make the top of your funnel open and you'll get that diversity naturally. You don't need to, just paint a picture that that's all you want because you're getting it across the board.
Indeed. Yeah. No, really good point. I mean, there's a lot of conversations in terms of how difficult it is to, approach VCs, and, particularly if you're not male and went to a couple of different universities. We've got a podcast coming out. It'll be released before this one with Madonna Capital, really talking about the funding gap. I think the gap, I guess, is caused as a result of a funnel. Approachability is part of that. So
like you said, there used to be a lot of you needed a warm introduction. Don't get me wrong, warm introductions will always help, but actually, a VC, if you do your homework and you've like so many founders approach VCs and pitch that are completely wrong. They're the wrong VC for them to like from the start.
Yes.
And
yes.
a lot of founders kind of, when they talk to a VC and the VC says no, I mean, don't get disheartened. VCs see how many decks a day.
Yeah.
And also VC, from that initial skim of the deck, the VC doesn't understand your business from that. All they understand is whether or not your business is right for them in that, 3 to 4 minute skim of the deck they do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, don't worry about that initial response. Actually, if you research the VC, done your homework, make sure they're the right VC for you. Get some references. If you're a founder looking at a VC, go on the VC's website, go to their portfolio page, pick a company at random and speak to that company and say, are they complete dicks or are they, were they useful investors for you? And you'll get a much better picture that way. And then, when you then get yourself into their funnel, you have almost built a warm intro because you can say to that founder, hey, as we're getting on, would you mind introducing me to the VC? And then that's your warm intro.
That's right.
So you're right. It's so important, but so many people miss it. So,
yeah. That's it. I could go on with a few different stories about people trying to get warm intros, and then you get burnt later on sometimes as well. So it's kind of like you also got to be careful about who you provide an intro to. True. Well, look, James, there were some really good tips for people wanting to get into sales. You've also mentioned, how you inherently in your job, you work with a lot of founders and investors, and particularly the investors. Do you have any tips for founders based upon, your interactions throughout the different funds you've worked at?
Yeah, I guess just a lot of founders, once a VC's invested, they deal predominantly with like the investor director or the investment team.
Yes.
But I think, something that Fuel have been big advocates of and previous funds I've worked at is, having the sales team on a call where the founder does even like a 10-15 minute update.
Yes.
Because eventually, the sales team are going to be talking about your company to an investor. If you don't, if the sales team aren't equipped with enough information about your company and they can't talk to investors about it, it will affect the amount of funding that fund can raise. So, I think founders the type of founders that are very active with the investors is great. And don't be wrong, they've got their day jobs to do. Like they can't spend all day with their investors, but, founders that, regularly update people. There's a guy I used to work at a company that we funded from an old fund called Sherpa.
Yes.
Andy, the founder, is so, his passion is unreal. And, he's built a hell of a business. And he always used to kind of, text, WhatsApp, and just, a group WhatsApp with all the people from the VC saying, guys, I've got to deal with this potential massive client, whatever it was. And obviously if we can help, great. But also just being able to know that and then tell an investor results in so much more. So I think, founders that prepare, the board updates and stuff is great, but preparing a kind of investor memo, if you want, that goes out once a month, that VC can share it throughout their team. The sales team are then armed with enough stuff. Sharing the decks and stuff is great. But I think if more founders do that, it will be a lot easier for the salespeople.
Indeed. No, really good insight, because it's sort of, there's that loop of, founder, raises money and then deals with the investment team. However, later on, if they want to have a follow-on round, the fund has to, raise investment in order to bring that back to the founder. So you've kind of brought it full circle there, which is really good. Yeah,
it's so important. And there's so many companies that, if they want to do a follow-on round, the VC will normally do the preemption or whatever else. But if they want to do a bigger follow-on ticket, it's just so important. And then so many companies kind of, if you have a good business, it used to, like a year or two ago, it was very easy to get money. But now, VCs are so much more stringent on what they're looking for. They want companies that, every VC now seems to want £1 million of ARR and stuff like that. But actually, if you've kept them up to date and you keep your existing investors on board, if they're good investors, they'll want to know about your company. The type of VCs that never ask you how stuff is going aren't usually the ones you want on your board.
That's right.
But it's so important nowadays.
Yeah, and look, I think definitely in sort of a few of the interactions on the podcast and just in the industry, there's a very clear focus that VCs want to see a path towards profitability or a sustainable business, and so I think founders really need to be able to articulate that and demonstrate that they're executing that plan effectively to reach profitability.
Yeah, and also this is where the kind of fundraising comes in at the start, because if a founder says, right, we need to raise 3 million, that will take us to a profitable in 2025 or whatever.
Yeah.
If you then get there and you're not, all right, business has changed, everything needs to be able to adapt and all the rest, and it's always, best laid plans can go to waste sort of straight away. But actually, I think from a VC's point of view, if you're looking at companies that, they're constantly reinventing themselves, they're going to do a new thing, and none of them work out. All right, that's hard, but actually, the investor will take a step back and say, well, hang on, we can't keep funding a new business plan that doesn't pan out and then putting more and more capital in. So, I think founders talking to the VC, it's just so important to make sure that the VC agrees with what you want to do. If your goal is to get from today to a Series A or whatever it is, if the VC buys in and understands it, that's great. But, we spend a lot of time with companies going through their financial model when they first come in, because everyone's financial models, pre-revenue, it's just forget it. Like, it's completely different. But, once they're kind of decent level, £500,000 of ARR, their financial model needs to be quite accurate, because otherwise it's very difficult for the VC to justify, the metrics that they're going to then follow on with.
Yeah.
We obviously have the follow-on fund, and because we open the follow-on fund in kind of January time, and then we fully deploy it at the end of March. But because we have that structure, we have the evergreen structure with our early fund, but the follow-on fund, it's so important that we understand those metrics. It's so important that we see, if a company said to us last year they're going to do 3x growth year on year, did they actually do it? Because otherwise we just sort of carry on funding dreams. But I think, VCs now, and any angel investors as well, there's so much more kind of looking for accountability from the founders. And if they said, this is what we're going to do, it's kind of, okay, did you actually deliver on it? And don't get me wrong, there'll be always reasons why things can't happen, which happens every day. But it's, as I said, those ones that are constantly reinventing the wheel, and then it never quite rolls. So
yeah, indeed. James, look, we've covered a lot today.
Just a tad.
Yeah, that's it. It's been fantastic, from your sort of journey, starting off, at the bank, and then getting into the different funds, raising money from all kinds of investors, and also diving into your engagement with the portfolio funds at Fuel. You've given some really good tips to people who are, looking to get into, say, sales, understanding the importance of the funnel, and then, some really good tips for founders at the end. So thank you so much for sharing everything. Really good. Yeah, no worries. So much. No worries. Thanks again for joining us, James.
Thanks for having me.